Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to the day after the first episode of WCW Nitro on the USA Network. We debuted in the Stabler Arena, as was a show that WWF booked for WCW's potential reboot. If you've not seen that episode, there is what went down, but you can also, of course, check that out. And in previous series, I've always kind of just done show to show, so the next thing you'd expect to see is the next episode of Nitro, but I am actually going to, with this save, because it's more about rebuilding the company as a whole rather than just putting on a TV show, I do want to sort of show the behind the scenes. So on this previous episode, we promoted that there will be a mystery tag team, former WCW World Tag Team Champions, facing the Natural Born Thrillers. Now, it's not going to be a team who particularly excites anybody, I don't think, but the reason that it's going to go like this is because it's going to be a start of a storyline. We are rebuilding the WCW Tag Team division because, as far as I'm concerned, the only recognised heavyweight tag team we have is the current champions. So I thought a way to mask that while we try and build that division up is to bring in former champions for one-off deals, and then that will be leading to a big match for Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire. And I think as it'll play out over the next few weeks, it'll make more sense than just thinking, well, why are Ron and Don Harris being brought in? I do sort of have a little storyline for them that spirals out into the weeks that follow. I'm not a big fan of these guys. I think there's been a lot of stuff about their actual personal beliefs that is questionable, but also just they were pretty boring when you watched them on screen. However, times are hard, and they are two guys who are relatively over, I believe. Not that over, but they're a recognised tag team for, spoiler, Palumbo and O'Haire are going to beat them. They are going to come in on 1 month handshake deals each, and it's just really going to be a case of bringing them in, having them lose a couple of matches, and then sending them back out the door. But if they do impress, maybe they'll get another couple of months, who knows. As well as those two coming in, I do want to debut somebody else on the show, but it's going to be linked into another thing that we're going to do, which is to set up a relationship. Now, I read the Wrestling Observer rewinds that are on Reddit. I'll put a link in the description actually to them because they're well worth reading, especially around this time if you're trying to get into the WCW 2001, the sale, that kind of thing. But what I want to do is get a working agreement with a company in Japan. And I actually saw when going through the Observer recaps that Johnny Ace had done an interview about this when he was sort of the head booker towards the end. He wanted to do a working agreement. Now, he had a lot of history with All Japan Pro Wrestling, but from what he said, they were not really in a position to be, well, they didn't really have the roster, I don't think, or the talent that would be viable for WCW to want to share workers with them, which meant that there was either New Japan Pro Wrestling, which WCW obviously has a lot of history with, and they are the most prestigious Japanese company, so I think it's just the better look to have an agreement with them. But I just feel because of his history with All Japan and then all the people who left All Japan to go to Pro Wrestling Noah, it just feels to me like I don't know, it doesn't really matter either way which one I go. But I've looked at the roster of both, and I will actually show you the roster of both after to see whether you think I've made the right decision or the wrong decision. We have adopted a friendly attitude towards them because I've seen on other people's saves that definitely helps you get in those talent trading agreements with them. But we have now got access to some Pro Wrestling Noah talent as and when we need them. I don't think straight away we're going to use it that much, but this is the 5 main stars for the company. I'm not going to pretend I'm massively clued up on the sort of Japanese wrestling scene around this time. That is their roster, and I'll show you New Japan Pro Wrestling just in case some people might think I'm making an absolutely terrible decision here. That's the current roster of New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2001. My impression is that Noah were on the up at this time and New Japan Pro Wrestling were on the decline, but I might have my timelines off there, so don't take my word for it. But with this working agreement with Pro Wrestling Noah, I do want to sort of symbolically bring somebody in who will represent the two companies coming together, and we are going to actually announce the working agreement on the next episode of Nitro with the signing of Vader. So when he comes out, we will put over that he is a regular in Japan for Pro Wrestling Noah, and that will sort of work, I think, with how I want to book Vader. I think he's going to be not a part-timer, but he's going to be, well, he's limited, so we are going to use him in a limited capacity. I'm going to offer him 6 months, and hopefully if he agrees to the deal after the 1st of July, that will mean that we have him until Starrcade 2001, because it might be the case that after 6 months we think actually his legs are in a bad way, his back's in a bad way, which I will show you on his attribute screen in a minute, and that actually he's not really worth what we're paying for him. So he wants his travel expenses covered, which is fair enough, to be fair. Is he based in Japan? No, he's based in the Mid-South, and he only wants to work major TV shows and above. I'm going to see if he'll accept just not working house shows. That's fine by me, and I've got a few matches in mind for him. I actually have a space with a pretty big star for the sort of penciled in Starrcade card. I'm not sure Vader is the right pick for that, but just having an extra big name to work with does mean that I can reshuffle the current plans. He is pretty reasonably well skilled, he's got that menace, and he has a fair bit of popularity. I think that puts him, is it just under Buff Bagwell and Lance Storm, or at least similar if not the same levels as them. The only bad side I suppose is that he was presented very poorly in the WWF, and that will be American audience's last impression of him, so it's a case of sort of trying to rebuild him from the ground up, and it will be a slow build with Vader. We're not going to bring him in and have him go after Booker T straight away, even if that might seem like a good idea. I think just because he's not particularly in the best of physical health, he's got a troublesome back, troublesome knees, so it's going to be a case of, again, hiding the weaknesses, highlighting the strengths, and with any luck we will have somebody who is a big star that can, in my head, I really have a vision of Rob Van Dam and Vader on the separate sides of the ring to each other, and the way that their clash of styles, I can just imagine that being a really, really great match. Rob Van Dam taking down the monster, hitting him with a 5-star frog splash, and solidifying himself as a main eventer in the company. So that's hopefully a deal that we can get over the line, and like I said, that will be us bringing on screen the fact that we are working with Pro Wrestling Noah, and down the line we may see some of their big stars on our show. I am also going to bring in Jimmy Hart, and I think I'll use him as Vader's manager. He's got decent microphone skills, much better than Vader's certainly. He's got a little bit of popularity as well, but it's that booking skill that I'm going to be looking at. He's going to be added to the booking team, and I know that him and Johnny Ace were part of the WCW booking team towards the end of WCW's real life run, so whether you see that as a good thing or a bad thing is debatable. We will just offer him a 6-month deal, no travel covered, and he is happy to work for $170 a week. He does have other contracts actually, so I'm going to try and get him on an exclusive written, just because I don't really want too many of our talent, unless it's somebody from Noah working with other promotions, and I think it's probably going to take something like $250 to get, yeah, there we go. I might have been able to get him for a little bit cheaper, but $250, that's $1,000 a month, maybe $1,250 if he's on pay-per-views. Certainly not going to complain about that. And that is everybody we will be bringing in before the Great American Bash, so I'm going to advance through, and if there's anything again of note before we get to the Great American Bash, I will share that with you. So it didn't actually occur to me with it being so soon into the save, but we are actually halfway through the year, so we have got the Wrestler of the Year, etc. so far awards, so I'm just going to flick through them. I'm not going to go through it because nothing's really going to be too relevant for us. We've put 2 shows on, so I'd be very surprised if anything related to our company is even involved in this. We do see that the King of the Ring is the best show so far, so the question on the news screen there was, can we put anything on better? Steve Austin versus Hardy versus Edge. Okay, so WWF going in a different direction post WrestleMania 17 than they did in real life, but yeah, I try not to look at the AI too much. Jeff Hardy as young wrestler seems fair enough, and that is the rest of the awards. Noah being mocked by All Japan Pro Wrestling, so as their closest and dearest allies, we're certainly not going to be happy with that at all. Not much else other than Juventud Guerrera showing up wasted, justifying the decision that we made not to sign him. And we have got to the 1st of July now, so if Vader signs that 6-month contract, he will be here for Starrcade, whether or not we decide to extend his contract. The brand new WWF headquarters have been unveiled today, a symbol of the organised current level of soft power at the building. Okay, WWF spending money on a new headquarters there, and I have just seen actually down the screen Taka Michinoku, just the way he's been booked, I don't think we have any interest in him, but this does make me think that there's quite a few people in the WWF who are Grandmaster Sexay. Maybe Jerry Lawler will suggest we bring him in, but I'm going to actually look at who on the WWF and their developmental rosters. There seems to be quite a few people here, and I am actually interested in some of them. So China, she's staying despite her relationship. I'm pretty sure she should have a... So she hates Stephanie and openly hostile, but they're offering a new deal. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of digging into who is... I don't think we want him. Ooh, Rodrageous. That is Shane's other mate in it. Yeah, so Pete Gas hasn't debuted yet, so that's perfect. Exclusive written deal. We'll try and get him on the same deal that we set these terms. So it looks like we might be getting into a bit of a negotiation war for him as well. And there's a couple of people. Spanky, probably not that interested in him just yet. Alex Abrahantes on the WWE. What? Is that correct? Well, I never knew that, but a couple of people signing. Don Harris has agreed while Ron is holding out, so that's interesting. Hopefully we don't just get one of them, because there's nothing more useless than one Harris brother. We also have some contracts to deal with, so I'll do that off screen, and then I'll show you as we confirm, because I think we'll offer Buff Bagwell another short-term deal. I think probably 6 months to get him through to the end of the year as well, and then we'll reassess as 2002 begins. Kasayashi definitely, Reno and the the Wall's definitely going, but the rest of them will be getting extensions as long as their demands aren't too unrealistic. So we'll go per show deal for Billy Silverman, and we'll offer him a 1-year contract. We don't want to be paying things that we don't have to, so that's a decent deal for him. I think happy with that. Buff Bagwell, I think we'll stick it as a exclusive written deal, and yeah, we're happy to make that offer to Buff Bagwell, and hopefully he's happy to stay for the next 6 months. Dawn Marie is somebody we're going to bring in the future, so I'll just delete these emails as I go through them so I don't have to do things again. Kaz Hayashi, 28 years old, so he's young and he's talented, so I think we'll offer him a per month deal, and we'll go 2 years. Not covering his travel because I think he will be based around here. Is 2 years too long? I'm wondering whether to just do a year deal at this point of the save. He's okay, but he's not fantastic. Yeah, I think I'll just do a year for Kaz Hayashi, and then again, it's something we can reassess. I can't see him being somebody at the top of WWF priority list, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Reno again, exclusive written, and we'll do 1 year again for Reno, because I do think that we'll do 6 months. He's not really shown anything to make me think that he's going to be anything special, so we'll do 6 months, and then we'll have some decisions to make as 2002 begins. The Wall, it's unfortunate, but he's in rehab until November, and I don't even think I have plans for him when he comes back, so we will just let that contract expire. I'll leave it on my emails just in case I do change my mind. But let's now look at the office screen, where I will be able to add Jimmy Hart to the booking team. Now, I hope I don't upset anybody too much. So McMahon and Ace have poor booking chemistry, so that's not good. So Finlay seems to have bad chemistry with everybody, so we will remove Finlay from the team. He's annoyed by that. I don't really care. I'm not going to get too much into that. We'll throw him a bonus if he starts kicking off. And then we will put Jimmy Hart on the team, and hopefully he can have a bit of good chemistry with the guys on the team rather than Fit Finlay obviously not doing so well. Where is Fit Finlay now? We'll try, and I don't really want to give him money because I don't think it's really the best way to do it. I can't really see an angry road agent affecting us too much. Maybe I'm speaking too soon there. I do need to remember actually as well to change the name of Nitro this week to WCW Nitro : Great American Bash, and that'll just be so that when we look in the show history, we'll remember which were the special episodes and which were the regular episodes. And we've got Buff Bagwell, of course, versus Booker T to look forward to for that. But I'm going to look at the contract overview for the WWF. Alex Abrahantes, China. I did think about bringing China in, but we don't have a women's division, so I'm probably not going to. Let's have a look at what $50,000 of nearly $50,000 it's going to cost us to bring her in, so I don't think we'll bother competing there. S.A. Rios, again, he's somebody I would have liked for the Cruiserweight division. Let's have a look. $9,000 a month. That might just be worth it, you know. Let's see his ability. If he's over, so he'd probably be one of the more over Cruiserweights we've got. He's decent all round. He's only 22. Right, I think, what are they offering him? 2 years. So if we match a 2-year contract and go exclusive written, cover his travel, we'll see if he lets us. Am I just potentially setting us up for a bit of financial trouble here? Is 10,000 too much to offer him? I'd accept these terms, but I have a better offer from another promotion. So let's see what the WWF are offering him that we can't. I'm not going to give him a bonus for events. I'm not going to give him a signing on bonus. I think probably it's just one of them where I'm not desperate to have him on my roster, so we're not going to go sort of all out and compete with him. Grandmaster Sexay looks like will be available. Taka, again, he's been booked into the ground, so I don't think there's much there. But I will look at, was it MCW that had a few people's contracts running out? So Dawn Marie's on an ongoing. So Spanky, not interested in. But these, I don't really want Bryan Danielson at this stage of his career, but Rod Rageous we've already gone in for. And then there's Joey Matthews and Christian York who are on development deals, so I'm thinking maybe we can outdo the WWF here. We'll go exclusive written. I just think these would be really cool additions to our roster, so we'll go 2 years, is it, that they're offering? And we're going $5,000, so that's considerably more than WWF are offering. It's one of the two, so what can we do to try and... Joey Matthews, 21 years old, I think a 3-year, nah. How can we sweeten this deal? What if we say we'll do 5,500 for 2 years? Yeah, so that looks like it's the better deal. I think the WWF will come back and I'll show you as I compete with them. And Christian York being the other one. I definitely think that these two can be a great addition to our future tag team division with the Cruiserweights. So he has a better offer from elsewhere, so I'm going to just try and do the same deal for him. I'd imagine the overness is pretty similar. Cover his expenses, and he'd seriously consider signing for us for $5,500 a month. So I think, what's the other WWF developmental? I will just have a quick look in case there's anybody else who is under WWF contract who I'll regret not signing. Relationships, IWA, Memphis, Ohio Valley, and UPW. So they don't like the WWF, so that's interesting. OVW and IWA, so I'll just check if they have any development contracts expiring in either of those two companies. OVW have Dean Hill, Flash Flanagan, no, not interested in any of them, and the other one was IWA, I believe. 30 days exclusive. Yeah, I think we're fine to pass on those two, to be fair. So we will now go through to the 3rd of July, and I'm hoping that we're going to see that deal get done and that deal get done, because I am getting a little bit nervous that we're only 48 hours from the Great American Bash and two of the people we wanted to show up aren't there. If just Don Harris shows up, that's, well, I think the Harris brothers being the surprise tag team is bad enough, and I think it's not a good start for the company if our big surprise is one of the Harris brothers. Joey Matthews has fobbed us off. Rod Rageous, there's no doubt in his mind he's ready to, but we haven't. Vader, you're playing with me here. I'm not happy with that at all. Christian York, I mean, I wanted them both. So what's he signed that's so bloody good? So he's got a 2-year deal. Is there a way to find out how much he's on? I don't think there is, but yeah, whatever. Well done, Joey. You could have probably got a lot more money than you did, but rival bid update, fair enough. WWE are considerably bigger than us, to be fair, so I shouldn't complain too much. And if I'm not getting Joey Matthews, I'm not that arsed about Christian York either. Don Harris has 30 days left on his contract. Rod Rageous, the rival bid wasn't enough. See there, a loyal soldier, him and Pete Gas, the two first guys to jump ship, Shane McMahon's childhood friends, showing their loyalty, and I'm going to be very concerned. Yeah, Vader. Whew, thank God. So we are now at Wednesday, the 4th of July. It is time for the Great American Bash. Christian York bid fails, but I'm not that bothered about that. Ron Harris has 30 days left on his contract, and the Wall is probably still going to leave. I think he's definitely going to leave. I'm going to delete that email because it's a waste of time having it there. We do have a couple of things pre-booked for tonight's WCW Great American Bash, so I will just pop them in. So if Booker T and Buff Bagwell, I think that's actually the only match that we officially confirmed. No, it's not actually. We've got that match, the World Heavyweight Champion in action, not for the world title, but we do have a title match on the Great American Bash as Sugar Shane will defend against Chavo Guerrero Jr. So there we go. That is the show set for tonight. WCW's Great American Bash. And I'm going to run through now and see what happens on the night. I don't think we've missed anything, so hopefully I'm not going to want to go back. We're not going to give anybody the night off. The venue for tonight's show, I'm not really sure where we're going to go. I don't really have anywhere specific in mind, so I think I am just going to let the game pick the Donald. I don't know where that is. No pre-show incidents to deal with, so that's good. We'll go into the booking meeting now. We've generated a fair amount of creative energy here, so we've spent 30 of it, so we've got 146. So what I'll do is we've got some angle ideas. We've got one of each basically, so I will spend it on. I want to create a finish. That's a safe bet, so I'll use that on something. I'll do an angle idea, I think, as well. Bit of a gamble, so I might use that on something lower down the card. So what does that leave us with? 56, so we can actually spend that on. I'll go for a storyline idea with that, and it's a near certainty, so I might put out that on the World Tag Team Championships storyline that we have going. Mike Tenay and Jimmy Hart getting along well is good to see. Booker T and Tajiri seem to be getting along, so might be getting more professionalism from Tajiri. Chuck Palumbo and Arn Anderson having a row and needed to be physically separated, so yeah, right, so we're getting some bad incidents, so the locker room hasn't changed too much. It seems like a lot of incidents are going down on every single show. Do we need to address the roster? Maybe after those fights we'll try some team bonding, and it just made Fit Finlay and Booker T not get along, so a bit of a waste of time there. But here we are at WCW Nitro, the Great American Bash, so I'll get into booking that show and see you on the other side for the second episode of Nitro, and the first one that is classed as a special episode. And with the show booked, you can now see that there are just 2 people not being used on tonight's show. Of course, having the backstage party definitely gives you a reason to put as many people as possible on the show. David Flair is still written out with that injury sustained at the hands of Mike Awesome, and Pete Gas has yet to debut. And I'm thinking, now that I've signed Rod Rageous to a WCW contract as well, it's going to be a case of waiting until both of them can debut together, rather than bringing Pete Gas in and then Rodney slightly after. Before the televised show, we have have 3 pre-show dark matches: Mike Sanders, Reno, and the Peaks of Perfection. 4 power plant guys who have actually worked together before defeat Jamie Noble, Johnny the Bull, and the Young Dragons. Mark Jindrak pins Jimmy Yang. Probably wouldn't have selected that, but I didn't select a loser, so I only got myself to blame with a diving clothesline, and it's a decent match. Nothing more really to say about it. Steve Corino then makes his first in-ring appearance since the Big Bang, defeating Kui Wee in 4 minutes and 32 with an old school expulsion. He gets a 55, so that is a good sign that somebody unimportant and who's just coming in as a basically unknown guy is getting a decent rating, so hopefully something to build on when he does eventually make his Nitro debut. Don't worry, I'm just holding off until there feels like a time to spotlight him. It's not a case of him being somebody who, well, I kind of have nothing for him yet, but it's not because I don't want to. It's just about finding the right time and place for him. If I'm still saying this in 6 months, then you have every right to criticise my booking of Steve Corino. I tried out the tag team of Devon Storm and Jason Jett again, and they defeat Romeo and Skipper in 6 minutes and 28. Unfortunately, Jett off his game there, but a reverse DDT. Devon Storm defeats Elix Skipper, and we will actually follow something up on Nitro with Devon Storm and Jason Jett, but again, decent performances all around. We will then go into the Great American Bash, and it begins with a cold open. We have a large room that has been adorned with USA patriotic memorabilia, flags and bunting, and there's food and drink. It is all set up for everybody to be having a great time, and as we pan around, we see Kui Wee, Mike Sanders, Reno, all sorts of people. Of course, you can only put so many on screen, but they all appear to be having an absolutely fantastic time as the first people who filed into this party. The only people who don't look happy are the United States champion Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, who are basically being wall huggers, arms folded, looking absolutely miserable and disgusted to be a part of a party celebrating the United States. But as Shane McMahon said, as the United States champion, Lance Storm will be front and centre of this party, which also includes him having a championship presentation later tonight. Now, it's not a great way to start the show, but as the camera pans around the room, we see Shane McMahon stood ready to address the already gathered roster members. Shane tells everybody to have a great time and does warn them that anybody who's booked to wrestle tonight, they need to hold off on the booze until after their match. He is then approached by Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare, who speak like they're chatting with an old friend. We really want to get over a rapport between these 3 guys. They want the scoop on who their opponents will be in their match tonight, but Shane remains tight-lipped, only confirming that the former World Tag Team Champions who they will be facing are in the building. The banter continues until Buff Bagwell walks over and looks to get in on it. At this point, the 3 men disperse. Buff looks annoyed, and even more so when it's Kui Wee who catches up looking for a chat with him. Now, in-game, Kui Wee and Buff Bagwell have a negative relationship. I'm assuming this is based on something that happened in real life, but the way I'm going to book Buff Bagwell, it's not burying him, but I have a long-term plan of sort of knocking him down and building him back up. Not to give away the result of tonight's main event against Booker T, but it's almost like we're trying to agitate Buff Bagwell as much as possible, and then hopefully once he's out of his poor form, we'll see a new character for him, because I think he's pretty stale at this point. He's been just doing that obnoxious gimmick for a while, and I think he's one of the people who I've got a really, really good idea for. Hopefully people viewing agree. We again open, instead of with a big in-ring segment, we have a match. This, I don't know if this is going to be something we do every week, but WWF definitely had their formula at this time of the modern TV opening leading into setting up a main event and other things for the night. So we are going to at least try and differentiate in that regard, and I think a really good way to open this show is Sugar Shane defending the Cruiserweight Championship successfully against Chavo Guerrero in 10 minutes and 10 with a Vertebreaker. It's a high spots match, and it highlights just how good Sugar Shane is. A 65 is really, really good for him, and we gain heat to the new face of the Cruiserweight division storyline. He's now beaten Billy Kidman and Chavo Guerrero, 2 of the most decorated champions we have ever had in this company, so we're really trying to present Sugar Shane as really the apex of what it is to be a Cruiserweight in 2001, and that match does put an end to Chavo Guerrero's running the Cruiserweight division on a permanent basis. The commentators put over that Helms is clearly front and centre of this new WCW Cruiserweight division, and it's on every other Cruiserweight to step up. And essentially what I'm doing quite a lot with the tag team division, with the Cruiserweight division, I'm playing out the logic that I'm using as part of the storyline. So Sugar Shane currently is head and shoulders above any of the new Cruiserweights we have, so that's going to be the storyline. Your job is to step up if you're a Cruiserweight. Similarly, the tag team division is in an absolute dire state, so the storyline we're doing is that we need to bring in outside teams, and while that's going on, we can, underneath the surface, build up a bit of a tag team division, and hopefully by Starrcade, which is my big target for most of these things, we have been able to build up new cruiserweights, new tag teams, and we'll actually see that those divisions are flourishing. Unlike Billy Kidman at the pay-per-view, Chavo Guerrero does not take his defeat well and storms off up the ramp after his match. The Great American Bash now appears to be in full swing, everybody enjoying themselves, even more people have filed in, but Lance Storm is complaining about everything he comes across walking through the room, throwing snide jibes at random people, and particularly he doesn't like the food that's on the table. He picks up a tray of pizza and asks, "Who eats this crap?" He then goes to throw the pizza into the trash before he's stopped by Johnny the Bull. Johnny obviously not happy with the disrespect to what I think most people will agree is one of the greatest foods ever invented, and it's just putting over how miserable is Lance Storm that he doesn't even like pizza. What a sick bastard. Mike Awesome then looks to intimidate Johnny the Bull, obviously backing up his friend. But before anything too serious can happen, Shane McMahon steps in. He says that if there's an issue, we're not going to settle it here in this party. How about Mike and Johnny settle it in the ring next week? The two men agree to that. They're both more than happy to fight. But in that moment of seeming calm, Rob Van Dam comes in, confronting Team Canada, furious about what happened last week. But again, Shane says there is going to be no physicality in here tonight. Lance tells RVD that his issue isn't with them anyway. He's just a sore loser. It's Kanyon who Rob Van Dam should be focused on, so trying to deflect attention from him and Mike Awesome, RVD fires back, but Shane kind of takes him to one side. He puts over the performance of RVD last week. Everybody who watched Nitro knew that Rob Van Dam deserved to leave as the United States champion, and he's sure that opportunities will come for him again. He just needs him to hold tight for this week, and then Rob will get what he wants, whether that's Kanyon, whether that's Awesome, whether that's Storm. They can sort it out. Rob is obviously still frustrated, but Shane, we're putting him over here that he has a good rapport with a lot of the roster, and basically they trust him for now at least, and are going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, in a volatile wrestling locker room, that could change very, very quickly. Booker T then comes to the ring and says that he knows tonight is supposed to be a celebration, but he personally isn't in that good of a mood. He has Buff Bagwell in the main event, and it's going to be great beating the hell out of him. But before that, he wants to call out Diamond Dallas Page. DDP comes down to the ring with a smirk on his face, but does offer a seemingly sincere apology to Booker T. He thought that the champ had been in the business long enough to be able to handle one diamond cutter, but he understands it was a cheap shot. He was a little bit out of order, so how about he offers Booker one free shot? Diamond Dallas Page then turns his back to Booker T and says, "Take your shot, get your revenge, and we will draw a line under this." But actually doing that annoys Booker T further, pretty understandably, and maybe that was DDP's intention. Obviously, Booker isn't going to take a cheap shot on Diamond Dallas Page. As Booker hesitates, however, he is jumped from behind by his upcoming opponent for tonight, with the opportunistic Buff Bagwell dragging him out the ring and driving him shoulder first into the steel steps. Neck first maybe, because of course Buff has that blockbuster finisher, so that will play into the story of the main event. Gone before DDP even has time to react, Buff runs up the ramp with his obnoxious grin on his face. We can see in that picture right there. DDP then goes out to the ring to check on Booker T. Booker's kind of shrugging him off, of course. He's no fan of Diamond Dallas Page after what he did, but probably more so he dislikes Buff Bagwell. The commentators put over this preemptive strike before tonight's main event, and it's a decent segment that gains heat to our main storyline. Booker in particular does well. DDP then in the second part with a decent sort of keeping it at a good level. Buff's involvement does bring it down, but I'm still hoping with the main event that we have, it's going to be a good rating. And while I remember, actually, I did apply one of our creative finishes to the main event, so as long as that doesn't backfire, we should get a little boost. I think it was a near certainty. So yeah, I'm hopeful we're going to get a boost to our main event. Heading back to the Great American Bash. Hopefully people don't get sick of these segments because they are going to sort of be intermittently between each match. Shane McMahon is shown speaking with wrestling legend Jimmy Hart, who is having a great night, seeing a lot of old faces and some new ones, but he's sure the night is going to get even better when he introduces WCW fans to the newest member of the roster, a former World Heavyweight Champion. Shane McMahon, of course, knows exactly who he's speaking about, and he is looking forward to that coming in just a few moments. Returning from the ring, Buff Bagwell has a huge smile on his face. He thinks that Shane should be impressed with his outsmarting of Booker T, but Shane is not. He then wants to continue speaking with Jimmy Hart, but Diamond Dallas Page storms in, calling Buff Bagwell a coward. But Buff kind of validly has the question, how is this any different to what you did last week? DDP considers this and says, maybe you're right. He'd love to show Buff just how different the Diamond Cutter is to any other move in this business. McMahon once again has to step in, and this is going to kind of be the story of the Great American Bash backstage party, that he's trying to have this celebration, but it's wrestlers and they're just going to keep having these confrontations, and he's growing increasingly more frustrated as this goes on throughout the night. Shane says, you know what, if Diamond wants to get involved with Buff and he wants to get involved with Booker and they all want to get involved with each other, he's going to make DDP the special guest referee for tonight's main event, and that's just with the idea that Buff Bagwell, not quite main event level, so putting Diamond in there in a significant position does hopefully boost the star quality of our main event and adds a little bit of intrigue as to how the dynamic between DDP and Buff and DDP and Booker will play out. Jimmy's Mouth of the South gimmick gets an initial great rating, so I'm very, very happy with that, and we advance the World Championship storyline with a decent segment. Making his way down to the ring, followed by a slightly worse for wear looking Lash LaRue, Hugh Morrus takes a microphone and demands that the footage is played of Hack and Dreamer attacking Lash LaRue last week in his match against Shawn Stasiak. Now, as somebody said in the comments, this is a bit of a Misfits in Action reunion, although we won't be using that name, and Hugh Morrus will not be going back to the name General Rection. Hugh Morrus says that they're not running and they're not scared. These guys might have weapons, but Hugh and Lash are fighters. They call out these two extreme outsiders who make their way to the ring through the crowd. The commentators put over that Hack clearly didn't get the memo about not drinking before getting into the ring, and I do need to mention, of course, their manager is Francine, so she also comes down to the ring with them because I think she really rounds out the package in a nice way. And this might be seen as strange booking when you read it initially, but basically Hack and Dreamer are in the ring, Hugh Morrus and Lash LaRue are in the ring. Francine then takes a steel chair and a Singapore cane and throws them, slides them into the ring, whatever, and Hack and Tommy Dreamer just beat the crap out of the two men with the weapons. They don't care about wins or losses. They certainly don't care about disqualifications and rules, but we gain heat to the storyline with a 44 segment rating, and Hack and Dreamer do lose their debut, but very much in, basically it's not even a match, it's 48 seconds, and it really shouldn't count as a match if I'm perfectly honest. Hardcore Hack and Tommy Dreamer then continue their attack of Hugh Morrus and Lash LaRue following the ringing of the bell. It's a decent segment again. They use the Singapore cane and the steel chair handed to them by Francine to destroy the two men, while their initial focus is on Hugh Morrus. Once they do keep the bigger and stronger member of the team down, they turn their attention to Lash LaRue. Tommy Dreamer exposes the floor of the ringside area, removing the protective covering to reveal solid concrete. Hack then hits Lash LaRue with a brutal looking pile driver onto the exposed ground. Medics quickly rush to the scene, and eventually Lash LaRue is stretchered out of the building. Dreamer and Hack stand over Hugh Morrus in the ring as Jerry Lawler leads the condemnation of the action of these two extremely crappy wrestlers in the ring. His point is that they clearly can't get it done between the four ropes, so they have to rely on their garbage trash wrestling. As Lash LaRue is stretchered from ringside, Mark Jindrak storms to the top of the ramp, but quickly Shawn Stasiak and Stacy Keibler grab him, physically restraining him. They do not want to get into it with these two weapon carrying outsiders, so we're trying to put over that Mark Jindrak is basically got a bit of bravery about him, while Shawn Stasiak is a little bit of a coward, but probably it's smart also from Shawn Stasiak, whereas Matt Jindrak is the younger guy who just has that hot-headedness and wants to fight them. We didn't want to just forget that they were also attacked last week, but the focus of the segment is these two extreme outsiders who are possibly new to some members of the WCW audience. They have made a very, very serious mark and have took Lash LaRue, somebody who I think we can afford to have off screen for a few weeks, even though we've got a pretty small roster. They've taken him out of action to sell the impact of their arrival, and hopefully it's been a good start for them, albeit it's not in a high sort of profile feud, but I think Hugh Morrus is a good guy to bounce off them. I'd be interested to know actually whether people think that they're faces or heels at this point, because they're kind of straddling the line, and I don't really want to put too much of a label on them just yet. Shane McMahon is then shown watching the events of what's just happened away from the Great American Bash. Obviously, this is a very serious situation. We don't just want to go back to people bantering and having fun. So he's sort of gone to the side and he's talking to Arn Anderson. What do we do about these extreme outsiders, Hack and Dreamer? What do we do about their actions? And Arn is giving his advice as best he can. But Booker T comes in. He asks Shane to tell him that he hasn't just heard what he thought he did. DDP is going to be the referee in the main event. Booker thinks Shane is out of his mind. Shane assures Booker that despite their issues, he thinks that DDP has just a big of a problem with Buff Bagwell, so in his logic, he's going to call it right down the middle. Buff isn't happy with that. He'd rather just a normal ref, but kind of storms off, realising that the decision won't be changed. Basically a 66, again an okay rating, nothing too fantastic but nothing too drastically bad. Returning to the ring, Jimmy Hart makes his way down to the ring, hyping up the Great American Bash. He was always a very enthusiastic guy, so I think just him, maybe even just taking a minute to say how great it is and how he has amazing memories of the Great American Bash, should get the crowd up a little bit. And he sycophantically puts over the job that Shane McMahon is doing since bringing back WCW. He says that tonight is a historic night and he is proud to introduce a man with a lot of history in WCW. He then sends to the big screen where a video package plays hyping the former 3-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion Vader. And again, this run for Vader is going to be about rehabbing his image. His last time on US television was him being pretty much buried in the WWF for one reason or another. A lot of people say that backstage politics were to play in that, but we're kind of trying to give him a clean slate here. He won his first WCW World Heavyweight Championship at the Great American Bash in 1992, so 9 years ago now, and he'll make his first appearance in a WCW ring since 1995. So again, we're not bringing him in a major storyline to start with. It really is about building him up, and Mike Tenay puts over the announcement this week that it was confirmed that WCW would work with Japanese promotion Pro Wrestling Noah. He says they're the fastest rising, most exciting company in the Far East, and he points out that Vader is a full-time member of the roster there, so this may be the first of many Pro Wrestling Noah talents you see in WCW over the years. So not a good match. 50's an okay performance. It's somewhere to start. We can definitely build on that. And the match told a story. Vader defeating Disco Machine in 2 minutes and 4 with a Vader bomb. And the story is, this is a man with a chip on his shoulder and a point to prove. He is vicious, he is brutal, and he lays it in to his opponent. But he then stands tall to end the first 45 minutes of the show. It's weird to do a show that's an hour and a half, because I don't know whether we sort of segment it as an hour and then half an hour, or we do 2 45s. I really don't know. But Vader stands tall in the ring, joined by Jimmy Hart, who raises the hand of the man they call Vader. The commentators put over a huge addition, figuratively and literally, to the WCW roster, and that is a performance that will put everybody on notice. And they say after how his last run in his home country went, it's clear that Vader has a huge chip on his shoulder and an even bigger point to prove. Anybody who's seen his work in Japan will know full well that he is a different man, and it is a scary prospect for World Championship Wrestling to have him in the company. We then see Diamond Dallas Page in the back, having improvised a referee shirt. Maybe he's ripped off the sleeves or cut it down the middle, whatever it is, to give it that DDP style ahead of his role in tonight's main event. He is fired up about being involved in the main event, saying he's had his issues with both men, but he's going to call it down the middle tonight. Booker T comes in and sort of confronts DDP, telling him to keep his mind games out of the main event and just do his job in calling the match. Booker T is the champion in the main event. DDP just needs to count the 1, 2, 3. DDP says that he's going to do just that. Booker doesn't need to worry about anything. There is that condescending tone from Diamond Dallas Page, but it's just further building the tension and the hype towards tonight's main event. We then get that match promoted earlier, as Ron and Don Harris are the former World Tag Team Champions showing up. Sorry if that's disappointing, but they are beaten pretty handily in 3 minutes and 36 by the Natural Born Thrillers. The Natural Born Thrillers storyline advances but loses heat, but should gain heat as the champions stand tall, looking pretty chilled, having made pretty easy work of the Harris brothers. The sort of benefit of the current wrestling landscape is that you can bring in guys like the Harris brothers for a squash match, basically, and they've not really got too much of a leg to stand on. The commentators put over that the men are former 3-time World Tag Team Champions. This isn't two jobbers like we brought in last week, but they were made to look like rookies by the Natural Born Thrillers. coming out from the back, Shane McMahon applauds the champions on a job well done, saying that he really enjoyed that. Off microphone, the pair are kind of like, well, what have you got next for us? Shane says that he was so impressed that he wants to make this a weekly thing. Next week, another set of World Tag Team Champions will return to face the Natural Born Thrillers, and if they, or any future team that he brings in to face them, beat Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire, they will earn a guaranteed tag team title shot, so a version of an open challenge, basically being set up for the tag team champions on account of them being the only established heavyweight tag team that we have, and again doing good things for that storyline is nice to see. Returning to the Great American Bash, in Shane's absence, carnage breaks out. He's done so much to keep a lid on it throughout the night. The moment he goes out to the ring for just 3 minutes, or 2 minutes I think it was, chaos breaks down as Kanyon, who is giving advice to Devon Storm and Jason Jett, and that's planting the seeds for something that's going to come later. 3 guys who have that innovative reputation, so you can perhaps see where that's going to go. But Rob Van Dam confronts Kanyon, who reacts badly to being called out. We're kind of giving him this sort of, I'm trying to describe what the gimmick is that I'm going for with Kanyon. I suppose insecurity is the word for it, and I basically saw that he had a needy personality in the game, and that kind of made me think that's quite a good gimmick for a wrestler, that he's quite fragile, and anything that seems to be a slight on him, he reacts way over the top. So Rob Van Dam just getting in his face results in him throwing a glass of champagne in his eyes and then attacks him in a fit of rage. Rob Van Dam can't really see what's going on, but the two are just sort of going back and forth. At this point, Shane McMahon returns to the room and sees tables have been flipped, food's probably been thrown, because basically chaos breaks out. Obviously, because there's that tension between everybody, the moment that a fight breaks out, it just goes into complete chaos. Shane orders that both Rob Van Dam and Kanyon are removed from the party, and he's just basically saying, party's over, that's enough, you had your chance. He tried to make a nice backstage environment, and it's just gone to complete chaos. And Anderson, who, again, we're building a little dynamic with Shane here, that he's kind of his right-hand man here, a guy who knows WCW very well, and hopefully gives Shane a bit more legitimacy and authority. He says that it was Kanyon who started that, basically, and Shane makes the decision that not only is the party over and everybody needs to leave, but Kanyon needs to get out of the building, full stop. So it's a decent segment again, and losing heat to the storyline, but it's mid-card. We're around 50, so I'm not too upset about that. We then get a very, very poor match, and it's something that's just going to have to happen, I think. We've got so many guys who are unimportant that we're going to have matches between people who are unimportant. So whether that means that they're not actually getting over because of these matches, because it's just completely turned off the crowd, I don't know. Maybe somebody can advise me on that, but I wanted to put this match on. I wanted to highlight and showcase Super Crazy and Tajiri as they defeat 3 Count in 4 minutes and 55 with a moonsault. It sounds like a short match, but we want the cruiserweights to kind of be bell rings, balls to the wall, so I think you can actually get a lot of stuff in 5 minutes. I don't know why I put Steal the Show. I probably just didn't have a Steal the Show match, so I just thought I'd stick it on there. 24 is certainly not stealing the show, even though the wrestling is pretty good. 52, and the performances are really good. So yeah, it is just a case of trying to get people more over. Like I said, that's the job, isn't it? That's the rebuild we're doing. It's to be expected. Tajiri and Super Crazy stand tall in the ring. They follow up their impressive Big Bang debuts, and they got the feature of the vignette last week, so we are building these guys up, and hopefully it will be successful. The commentators put over the newcomers' unique in-ring style, saying that this makes things all the more difficult for their opponents. But speaking of the cruiserweights, this is why Shane Helms is so important. He is the only recognisable guy we've got through choice, because I've kicked Billy Kidman and Chavo out of the cruiserweight division, but you know, that is how it is, and it's a rebuild job. The whole save's a rebuild job. Cruiserweights, tag teams, everything. That's just a situation. Buff Bagwell is then interviewed about the main event, puts over his confidence about defeating Booker T and earning himself a World Heavyweight Championship shot. When the interview is over, we see Buff spot somebody from the corner of his eye, and he shouts out to the Harris brothers. The cameras follow, and it appears that he has an offer for the two men, each with a pack of 6 beers in their hand that they swiped from the party after their match with Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire. They tell Buff to be quick. They've got some drinking to catch up on. Buff asks if they can do a job for him tonight, and they gesture, yeah, but it's going to cost you. Buff then pats his tights, because he doesn't have his wallet in his, he doesn't even have pockets in his tights. But anyway, he says that he'll be right back. He walks off, but after a long night, the Harris brothers don't feel like waiting and crack open their beers, so Buff's a little bit upset as he hears the beers crack open, but an arm is placed on his shoulder, that of Kwee-Wee. Kwee-Wee smiles and says, "I've got you, buddy. No charge." Buff Bagwell rolls his eyes. Kwee-Wee might not be whose help he wanted, but it's whose help he's getting. Returning to the ring, we see that we have a setup that's thematically the same as the Great American Bash previously, but it's in the ring. So we've got a table adorned with a flag or whatever, and all US related celebratory things, because Lance Storm is now going to come out for his championship presentation. And of course, this is done to get under the skin of somebody who has been staunchly anti-American for quite some time now. And Lance and Mike Awesome come to the ring, both furious at what they see. The balloons are making Mike Awesome very, very angry, as is the rest of the setup. Once in the ring, Mike Awesome takes it upon himself to destroy all US themed decorations, throwing down the bunting, demanding that the US flag draped from the ceiling is removed and replaced with a Canadian flag. He is not happy. However, Lance Storm says that none of this matters because this is what the United States is all about. They're about pomp and circumstance, but have zero substance. But last week, Lance Storm proved that Canada is always going to come out number one against the United States of America. And Shane McMahon promised him tonight that in spite of all this crap, he has a microphone and he cannot be interrupted by anybody in the back. This is his time to share his feelings on the United States Championship. And he cuts an anti-American promo saying that he is better than any wrestler this country has ever produced. And he's not the only Canadian who can say that. He demands that the fans rise for the playing of the Canadian national anthem. Now, we know Shane's not going to play that, but Mike Awesome pulls a tape recorder out from his pocket and holds the microphone to it, ensuring that a poor-sounding quality version of the Canadian national anthem can be heard by everybody. Lance stands looking completely emotionless, but wipes a tear from his eye as if this is something that is touching him deeply. Having seen enough, despite Shane McMahon's words, Rob Van Dam comes down to the ring and he goes after the two men. He starts off really well, throwing a few shots at Lance Storm, hitting some boots to Mike Awesome, and actually manages to send Mike to the outside. But as he sets up for a Van Daminator to take down the champion, he is jumped from behind by Mike Awesome. Excuse the little mistakes in the text that I've typed there. Awesome then looks to set up Rob Van Dam for a powerbomb through the table that is set up in the ring, but running down in the nick of time and grabbing Van Dam's leg, Billy Kidman is able to pull him to safety. So at this point, security now come down because, of course, this was not supposed to be interrupted. So Shane sent security out to make sure that this doesn't continue, because he had promised Lance Storm that this would be just his moment. But Van Dam, having been attacked by Mike Awesome last week, having been screwed out the title against Lance Storm, also, he, of course, isn't just going to sit there and listen to them run down himself and the country and the company. Yeah, Rob Van Dam may be in trouble for that, but he will feel, of course, he's done the right thing. And Billy Kidman, who tried to sort of set up a friendship with Rob Van Dam on last week's show, follows that up by coming and helping him. Maybe that will be enough to soften Rob Van Dam's stance on being a friend with him, basically, making Billy look a little bit needy there, but it's all playing into a storyline, and Van Dam is somebody who want to be central to everything in this company. And you can see straight away he's got stories with Billy Kidman, with Kanyon, with Awesome, with Storm, so a lot of the already established people. I mean, I want to push everybody involved in these storylines, but a lot of this is just a vehicle to try and get Rob Van Dam over, because he's going to be the star of this show and probably the most important person in this save, along with Booker T, for the foreseeable future. We then go into the back where the rubble of the Great American Bash, what previously was this amazing party, turned to chaos, is being cleared away by backstage staff, and Shane McMahon is sort of stood around surveying the situation. Again, it's playing into the humour that he got all these wrestlers in one place, what did he expect? And he is approached by Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire, who lightheartedly make this observation to him: this was only ever going to end one way. And Shane sort of laughs and shrugs. He accepts he may have been a little naive to think that he could keep things civil here. Changing the subject, Palumbo then asks where the after party is, and the three men look to leave together, so it looks like they'll be partying long into the night after Nitro is over. As they head to the door, Buff Bagwell once again tries to get in on the fun. He clearly sees the friendship that's blossoming between these guys and wants in on it. He tells them to wait up, because after he wins tonight's main event, he'll be joining them partying all night long. O'Haire kind of laughs at this, and I think we've all seen dynamics like this before, where somebody just thinks that they're friends with somebody and the other guys just think he's a total idiot. But yeah, you could argue there's a little bit of bullying going on towards Buff, to be fair, but it's Buff Bagwell. Well, I'm not going to say he deserves to be bullied, but you get the point. He's an annoying guy. You can understand why people don't want him around. The World Heavyweight Championship storyline has advanced with this segment, and we've gained heat to the Natural Born Thrillers, so bubbling under nicely, I think, that storyline, and we get a decent main event. I'm happy with that. Booker T with a 78 is good. Buff with only a 50 because he's in extremely poor form. I'm hoping that is only temporary, but the creative finish that we used was a success, and Diamond Dallas Page, remember, was the referee. I don't know why the crowd heat is unclear. In the match, we do get Kwee Wee running down. Obviously, Buff Bagwell tried to get the Harris brothers. Instead, he got Kwee Wee, but the referee going above and beyond the call of duty because he quite happily hits Kwee Wee with a diamond cutter and stops him from getting involved. Buff Bagwell is pretty annoyed to see his plan thwarted, and this basically leads to him being beaten cleanly by Booker T with a scissors kick, and that is the end of the show. Booker T standing tall. DDP, having thwarted the outside involvement of Kwee Wee, takes the World Heavyweight Championship from ringside and hands it to the World Heavyweight Champion. Of course, there's still that tension in the moment between the two of them, but Booker takes the title and allows DDP to raise his arm in the middle of the ring. All differences aside, DDP did keep his word of calling the match right down the middle, and even more so, he ensured that the match would end in a fair way. He asks Booker T, are they even? Booker kind of shrugs it off, but as DDP goes to leave the floor to Booker T, the champion keeps hold of his arm, not allowing him to leave the ring, pulling him back in and dropping him with a bookend. Booker T stands over DDP as the show goes off the air, telling him, now we're even. He then heads to the top rope to pose with his championship as the commentators put over the actions of the champion. Basically, he had an issue with DDP, but it seems now in a bit of a tit-for-tat manner, so maybe that is the best way for those two to work out their differences, but of course, it is far from over. They are still our two top stars, so yeah, there's still going to be segments and issues and tension between them. Another 70, so I think all three shows that we've got now have been a 70 rating. We made a similar amount of money again on this second episode, albeit this was supposed to be a special episode, gaining popularity in Hawaii, but again losing in those two major regions. We need to address that, really. We need to make sure that we're getting shows at least 75 so we're maintaining popularity. I know it's a gradual process, but we don't want to lose too much popularity. We don't want to take WCW even further back. Hopefully in not too much time we are able to put on better shows. Interesting news story there. Brock Lesnar, sprained ankle. I thought it might be a serious injury that could change the future timeline, but apparently not. So I think that's that's a little bit better than the debut episode, but I suppose we did put on a better main event and bill it a little bit more importantly. I don't know if the pre-booking makes any difference to that either, but that is WCW Nitro done, and I don't think I'm going to advance too much more here actually. I think I'm going to leave it here because I think this is going to be a relatively long episode anyway. Did I have that exclamation mark? These are the important things that I have to think about. There's no exclamation mark at the end of Nitro, but we didn't really set up too much for next week's episode, so that might be a little bit of a oversight by me there, but it was all about celebrating the Great American Bash, and we have the debut of Vader, we have stuff to follow up with the Extreme Outsiders with Rob Van Dam, so I think there's plenty to sink our teeth into. Thank you for watching, and I will see you hopefully next time for another WCW Nitro.